Everyone says you need three things to build a successful software company: technical skills, outside capital, and the willingness to quit your job and go all in. I had none of those. Bootstrapped Campus Kaizen to millions in ARR anyway, sold to private equity, retired at 40. I'm Sensi. Welcome to Starting Up, where we prove the conventional wisdom wrong. Let me tell you something nobody wants to hear. Your odds of building a successful startup and selling it for life-changing money? About 1%. That's assuming you start, which most don't. 1 in 100. You want to know what has better odds than that? Getting food poisoning this year. Your Amazon being stolen. A bird relieving itself on you. I'm Sensi, and I beat those 1% odds. I built Campus Kaizen, an educational technology company that began with a college roommate matching platform, scaled it to millions of dollars in ARR, sold it to private equity for a life-changing exit. Did it all without writing a single line of code. Bootstrapped 100% from day one, and did it most of it while working a full-time job and starting a family. This is Starting Up. And today we're talking about why the statistics say you should quit even before you start and why you're going to ignore them. Welcome to episode 1 of Starting Up. If you're listening to this, chances are you've thought about starting a company. Maybe you're already building something. Maybe you're still in the idea phase, wondering if you've got what it takes. Here's what we're covering today: the brutal, honest truth about startup statistics, why 90% of startups fail, why only 1% get acquired for meaningful money, and most importantly, why those odds don't matter if you truly believe that you can be that 1%. I'm going to share my story, how I went from zero to multi-million-dollar exit, and I'm going to be completely transparent about the odds I was up against, because understanding what you're up against is the first step in beating it. So let's get into it. Let's start with the hard truth, the thing that most entrepreneurship podcasts, most motivational speakers, most hustle culture gurus don't want to lead with. Your odds suck. Approximately 90% of startups fail. I'll say it again, 9 out of 10. About 1 in 5 startups fail within their first year of operation. That's 20% gone, year 1. By the end of year 2, 30% of startups have failed, which means roughly 70% survive past 2 years. Sounds pretty good, right? Half fail by their 5th year. Now, of the startups that make it to 5 years, call them survivors if you want, the ones who beat the initial odds, it's estimated that 20-25% of those are actually profitable. Think about that. You beat the odds, you make it 5 years, and you're still not making any money. Let's narrow that down to SaaS-specific companies, which is what I built with Campus Kaizen. Only 4% of SaaS companies reach $1 million in revenue. 4%. And only 0.4%, 0.4% make it to 10 million. Now here's the really tough one. The number I want you to remember. Estimates suggest that roughly 1 to 2% of all startups achieve an acquisition over $10 million. And of those, only about 1% get acquired for what we'd call a good price, where founders and/or investors, if you've got them, make meaningful returns. 1% of startups acquired for over 10 million, where the founder makes a meaningful return. That's the number. That's the club I got into. That's the club you're trying to get into if your dream is to start a company, grow it profitably, and ultimately have it acquired for a life-changing exit. Your odds? About 1 in 100. Now, I guess I could have led with this and had you turn off the podcast by now, but I assume you're still here. And that tells me something about you. It tells me that you're the kind of person who hears 1% and says, okay, So you're telling me there's a chance. Dumb and Dumber reference. Good. Because let's put this in perspective. Do you want to know what has a greater than 1% chance of happening? A couple things. Flight getting delayed, probably about 20%. Being left-handed, I think that's roughly 10% of the population. Getting a hole-in-one, if you're an amateur golfer that plays regularly, that's 2 to 3%, unless you're me. I'm not in that range. Dating someone with your same birthday, about 3% of couples. Hitting a deer with your car this year, about 1.5% nationally. 10% probably if you live in West Virginia. Being related to Genghis Khan, actually around 8% of Asian men, about 0.5% globally. Getting jury duty, about 3%. And as I mentioned earlier, having a bird relieve itself on your head. I couldn't find any really good data on this one, but they say about 5 to 10%. Every single one of those things is more likely than you building a successful startup that exits for millions. But here's the difference. Here's why I'm not discouraged by those statistics and why you shouldn't be either. With every single one of those examples, bird shitting on you, jury duty, hitting a deer, you are not in control. Those things happen to you. You're not betting on whether they'll occur. You're just existing in a world where they might. But when you start a company, you're in the driver's seat. You're not betting on a random chance. You're betting on yourself. And that changes everything. Maybe Han Solo was onto something when he yelled to C-3PO, "Never tell me the odds." If you're a Star Wars fan, you know this. They're navigating an asteroid field. 3PO blurts out that the odds of successfully making it through are 3,720 to 1. That's like 0.02%. And Han just ignores them and does it anyway. Because if you're oblivious to the odds, you just go and do. You don't really have that looming doubt in the back of your mind whispering, this probably won't work. Now, I'm not saying you should be oblivious, right? I'm saying you should be informed, aware of the odds, but resolute in your belief that you can beat them. Everyone who has ever thought of starting a business probably knows the statistics that most businesses are going to fail. We all know the odds. We do them anyway. Unlike getting shit on by a bird or hitting a deer, we're betting on ourselves. And in order to bet on ourselves, we've got to believe that we can actually win that bet. So let me share why I believe that could be that 1% and why, despite the odds, I went for it anyway. I can tell you firsthand from experience that this is 100% possible to start a company, grow it into a multi-million-dollar ARR revenue venture, and have it acquired in a life-changing 8-figure exit. I did it, despite the odds. This podcast and the book I'm working on exist for a few reasons. If you decide to continue and listen, my hope is that this content inspires you to pursue a dream of being a successful entrepreneur. I want to show you that it's possible to defy those startup odds, to win that game. I want to share my story, how I did it. And I want to provide you with lessons learned, strategies, and most importantly, all the mistakes I made that hopefully help you avoid those on your journey. I'm not saying what I did is the exact formula everybody's got to follow. This is just how I did it. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. This podcast is not going to hide those mistakes. I'm going to highlight them, in fact, so that hopefully you can avoid them. If you're still listening, despite those bleak odds I laid out in the first few minutes, you've already done probably more than most people will ever do. Most people will see these insurmountable odds and retreat back to their comfort zones. They'll stay there probably for the rest of their lives with most of them untapped potential. Later in life, they're probably going to wonder what it was like what it would have been had they gone for it. They might live with regret of never taking the chance to bet on themselves to win, really kind of win the only spin you've got in this game that we've got called life. But we're not going to be those people. We will not be those people. Now, before we wrap up today's episode, I do want to reward those of you that have stuck with me through all those depressing statistics. I'm actually going to share some events that have worse odds than building a successful startup, scaling it, and having it acquired for a life-changing exit. And I bet some of you have actually done these. Becoming a professional athlete, 0.03%. Dying from a shark attack, 0.00003%. That didn't happen to you if you're watching this. Winning an Oscar, smidgen of a chance. Dating a supermodel, they say, is 0.0003%. Sorry, fellas. But I bet those odds do go up if you make enough money. Bowling a perfect game, 0.004%. Being struck by lightning, winning the Powerball, flipping heads 20 times in a row. I mean, those are all things that have happened. So you think about stuff like that, and really building a successful startup kind of seems a lot more feasible now that you realize that there are things with much, much worse odds that still occur. If someone can bowl a perfect 300 game, and people do that, I know a few, you can build $1 million company. If someone can be a professional athlete and you watch them on TV, people do it, you can create and scale a SaaS business to multi-million-dollar ARR. Yeah, the odds suck. They're steep, but they're not impossible. Because the odds, though, are so razor thin, believing that you can do it is absolutely paramount. I can't tell you how to believe in yourself. All right. You either do or you don't. But I can tell you that in order to get where you want to go in the startup world, your belief in yourself must be so bulletproof that you can feel it in the end result as if it's happening right now. And that feeling has to be so strong and has to be so unshakable, even through the most difficult of times, because those times will come, and they will come a lot more often than maybe you think they will. I kind of liken it to a lighthouse, right? You've got to be a lighthouse. You're on your own. The tower is the resolve. Your light is your self-belief. Waves smash and smash and smash endlessly against the tower, try to bring you down. Looking for any opportunity to crack the foundation. The waves know that if the foundation so much as cracks, the tower will eventually come down. It will crumble under constant pressure. Fog over the sea makes it nearly impossible to see what's going on. Can't see what's ahead of you, tries to confuse you maybe into looking in the wrong direction. But you resist every wave that slams your foundation, even when you don't want to. You shine your light through the fog, you find your direction, because the only way that we're going here is forward. You probably have your own story as to how you found or developed self-belief. Just, if you have it, be thankful for however it happened, because to get where you want to go, you're going to need it. Over the next several episodes, I'm going to take you through my entire journey, how the idea for Campus Kaizen came to me when I was in college, from a bad roommate match and a overly simple questionnaire. How I waited almost a decade to do anything about it. Don't do that, by the way. How I validated the idea before writing a single line of code. How I found developers and managed them without any technical knowledge. How I formed and built strategic partnerships that helped me 10x our growth. How I scaled from $0 in revenue to multi-million-dollar ARR while working a full-time job and starting a family. How I knew when it was time to sell. What the private equity acquisition process actually looks like from the inside. And what life looks like after the exit. Spoiler alert, it doesn't suck. I'm going to share the strategies that worked, the mistakes that cost me 6 figures, the pivots, the fringe theory, the near failures, and the times I almost wanted to quit. Every bit of it. This is the roadmap that I wish I had. So if you're here, you're getting it for free. Right now, right here. But it all starts with one thing: believing that you can. In the next episode, we're going deep on belief. Not the rah-rah motivational speaker BS. Real uncomfortable truth about where self-belief comes from and why you cannot fake it. I'm going to share the story of my dad. My dad was my hero. You're going to hear me talk about him a lot in these episodes. And in the next episode, we'll talk about, a promise I made him as he was dying. That promise drove me to beat those 1% odds. Personal, maybe a little vulnerable, but it's the foundation of everything that came after. If you're getting value from starting up, please subscribe now. New episodes drop every week. I'm also writing the complete playbook in my book, Starting Up: How I Started, Grew, and Sold a Software Company for Millions with Zero Technical Experience. The book will go much deeper into every topic we cover on the podcast. Hopefully, if you subscribe, you'll get early access when it launches. The link will be in the show notes. Here's what I want you to do right now. Ask yourself, do I believe that I can be that 1%? Not, I hope I can. Not, maybe I think I can. Do you believe you can? And if the answer is yes, even if it's a quiet yes, even if there's a little doubt mixed in, because that happens, then you're in the right place. Because over the next several episodes, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. And if I can do it, so can you. Next episode drops soon. We're talking about where self-belief really comes from, the lighthouse, the waves, the promise I made to my dad when he was dying. Don't miss it. I'm Sensi. Keep starting up.